The first time I walked into a stone spring house in East Hempfield Township in the middle of August, I expected noise. I expected a compressor humming somewhere behind the wall, or at least a fan pushing hard against the heat. What I found instead changed something in me. The air felt 16 degrees cooler than the lane outside. The room smelled like wet limestone, apples, and clean iron. I could hear water moving. That was all. And the silence kept teaching me more. I stood there for 11 minutes looking for the machine. It wasn't there. And that's when I understood I'd been wrong about everything. Cooling was never supposed to begin with a compressor. It was supposed to begin with the air you already have. It was supposed to begin with the moisture it carries. It was supposed to begin with the temperature the earth refuses to change. I've been going back to Lancaster County every summer for 3 years. And every time, I find something the building industry forgot on purpose. This one begins with a salt, a draft, and a piece of cloth. Nothing more. Here is the promise. A $4.87 bag of calcium chloride, moving air, and shaded water can pull a room down by 8 to 14 degrees. No refrigerant cycle. And yes, this works even if your house was built 50 years ago. Stay with me. Because what I found in Lancaster County uses the same physics the Persians used in desert heat 2,400 years ago. I am not promising magic. I am promising repeatable physics. It works in a farmhouse. It works in a city bedroom. It works in a brick house from 1974. If you have one shaded opening, one hot air exit, and one small fan, you can test this in a day. Start with one room. Watch what happens. Then tell me this knowledge was ever primitive. The science is brutally simple. Your body already knows it. Sweat leaves your skin. Heat leaves with it. Your temperature drops. The United States Department of Energy puts the same idea in building language. The shallow earth below a building stays between 40 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. In summer, it acts as a heat sink. Pair that stable background with evaporation, and you stop fighting heat with brute force. Think of it like a car radiator. A compressor air conditioner forces refrigerant through coils and pays dearly for every step. A passive evaporative system asks water to change phase and asks air to move. That is a smaller ask. Department of Energy research on non-vapor compression HVAC calls the savings substantial. Desiccant-assisted designs cut energy demand by 30% to 90% against standard direct expansion cooling. Call this the coefficient of performance if you want the formal term. You get 10 to 15 units of cooling effect for every 1 unit of fan input. A central compressor usually gives you about 3. Humidity is the knife edge. Dry air accepts water fast. Wet air resists it. That is why the salt matters. Calcium chloride strips moisture before the air reaches the wet cloth. Then the cloth can cool, instead of turning the room sticky. A 1940 University of Nebraska circular on farm milk cooling described the same wet sack logic in plain words. Keep the fabric wet, keep air moving, keep the system out of direct sun. It never changes. That gap matters. It is the difference between cooling with phase change and cooling with machinery. It is the difference between buying a system and understanding one. Nobody told you, not your builder, not your contractor, not the man who sold you 16 SEER comfort on a payment plan. And that gap represents billions of dollars in equipment, service, and replacement every year. That is why you have never heard of this. I saw the living proof in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. The lane was white dust. The porch boards were hot enough to sting through my boots. Then Eli opened the spring house door. The whole temperature of the afternoon changed on my face. No condenser thump, no fan blade whine, only 56-degree spring water moving under crocks and shelves, exactly the way the National Park Service still describes at Hopewell Furnace. I remember the floor first, dark stone, slightly slick. The room did not flash hot and cold the way mechanical cooling does. It held one calm number. Eli's sister Miriam was trimming beans at a side table, and she never raised her voice to beat a motor. She told me the trick was not chasing the coolest minute. It was protecting the cool you already had from noon until supper. Eli put his hand on a damp muslin panel and told me his father called it borrowed cold. He said the family had been using the same summer logic for 4 generations. No service calls, no refrigerant leaks. His people came through the Palatinate from Canton Burn. They kept the habits that survived heat, milk, and August work. Windows high, shade deep, water moving, air always given a path. A government paper confirms the same logic. Usda Farmer's Bulletin 976, Cooling Milk and Cream on the Farm, was printed in 1918. It recorded spring water cooling and evaporation methods those families never stopped using. Go back far enough and the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. In ancient Egypt, wind-catching structures were already pulling moving air through buildings 3,300 years ago. In Persia, the builders of Yazd drove captured wind over subterranean water and through towers that still define the skyline. One surviving windcatcher at Dowlatabad rises 33 meters. Science History Institute records that porous earthenware vessels could cool water by 10 degrees Celsius, that is 18 degrees Fahrenheit. The BBC's reporting on Yazd makes the point even harder to miss. Tower openings face the prevailing wind. The air drops through the shaft. It moves over water. It enters cooler than it arrived. Egypt solved it with height and breeze. Persia solved it with height, breeze, and subterranean water. Nobody held a patent. Nobody needed permission. These were not copies. They were separate civilizations reading the same laws. Air movement removes heat. Water phase change removes more. Thermal mass refuses to panic when the sun does. The Amish didn't read this in a textbook. They figured it out the way all real knowledge gets discovered, by paying attention to what the earth was already doing. Every civilization that mastered desert heat arrived at the same answer independently. The Amish never forgot. They carried it from Canton Burn through the Palatinate to Pennsylvania 290 years ago. They kept building it because it worked. They never needed anyone's permission to do what made sense. Now the part that should make you angry. In 1922, Willis Carrier and Carrier Engineering moved hard into centrifugal chilling and commercial comfort cooling. The patents mattered, the future market mattered more. Passive cooling threatened something obvious. If comfort could be built into walls, airflow, shade, and water, fewer compressors would be sold. By 1938, Fortune was already calling air conditioning a competitive necessity. Carrier's own history records $500,000 in dealer purchases by 1933 alone. Then came the public demonstration campaign. In 1931, radio star Lowell Thomas described stepping into an old rail car at Carrier's open house. Outside it was warm as blazes. Inside it was 74 degrees. Carrier later said the railroads gave the greatest impetus to public acceptance. That was the sale. Cooling was no longer a local skill. It was a branded spectacle. It was modernity with a dealer network attached. The mechanism came next. In 1923, the American Society of Heating and Ventilating Engineers published Houghton and Yaglu's comfort zone work. They fixed comfort onto a psychrometric chart. Effective temperature became the new language. Uniform indoor conditions, standardized expectations, sellable equipment. Rava's History of Indoor Climate Research notes what happened next. The index defined comfort against a dry bulb condition at 50% relative humidity. It shaped the next 50 years. Climate-specific design started losing ground right there. Comfort became something you purchased from a machine. Then the mortgage system helped finish the job. Federal Housing Administration property standards rewarded standard services and repeatable construction. Farm planning literature did the same on rural land. Pennsylvania's agricultural history records spring houses declining as electric refrigeration spread. The useful sentence was never, "This works." The useful sentence became, "This is modern." That knowledge never disappeared. It was set aside. It was waiting. Look at who benefited. Lowell Thomas and the mass press made cooled space sound glamorous, safe, and inevitable. Fortune and other magazines sold the dream to readers and to appliance advertisers at the same time. The Federal Housing Administration rewarded standardized housing finance and repeatable construction. Carrier, Frigidaire, and the electric utilities gained a future built on summer load, belts, filters, compressors, and service contracts. Their incentives aligned perfectly. An entire field of knowledge disappeared from architecture schools, farm manuals, and ordinary building habits. Not because it failed, because it wasn't profitable. And the modern version never stopped. In 2022, The Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Institute spent $964,622 on federal lobbying, according to Open Secrets. Publicly, that money moved through refrigerant and equipment fights. Financially, it protected an equipment-first market. Every comfort problem still ends with a listed unit. It ends with a licensed install. It ends with another replacement cycle. The U.S. HVAC market was valued at $27.85 billion in 2022. Every passive alternative installed is one more box that never gets sold. Now, if you already own a house and you're thinking this only applies to people starting fresh, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. You don't need to rip out your existing system or buy equipment. You need a window, a drill, a weekend. Here is the build. Start with a shaded window, ideally north or east facing, serving a room no larger than 180 square feet. Build a simple insert frame from 1x2 cedar. Cut it to fit the opening. A common size is 24 inches wide, 24 inches tall, and 4 inches deep. Stretch stainless insect screen across the outside face. Behind it, staple 2 layers of unbleached muslin cotton 1.5 inches apart so the air has a wet channel to cross. Muslin matters because it wicks evenly. Polyester does not. At the top of that frame, run a 3/8-inch vinyl tube with 1/16-inch holes drilled every 2 inches. Feed that line from a 2-gallon food-grade HDPE reservoir. Set the reservoir at least 18 inches higher than the frame so gravity keeps the cloth wet. Catch the runoff in a 24-inch terracotta planter tray or a 3-inch deep HDPE pan. Now add the salt stage. Mount a vented cartridge box on the intake side. Make it 12 inches long, 6 inches high, and 2 inches deep. Fill it with 4.8 pounds of calcium chloride pellets. That salt pulls moisture from incoming air before it touches the wet cloth. Then place a standard 20-inch box fan 3 feet inside the room. Face it outward. Run it on low, usually 68 watts, not high. You are pulling air through the panel, not blasting air at your face. Keep the bottom of the insert at least 12 inches above the sill, so splashback never wets the framing. If your window gets afternoon sun, add a low-E radiant foil flap 2 inches outside the panel. Calcium chloride pellets are not optional. Table salt pulls moisture too slowly and leaves you with sticky air. The first build takes one Saturday morning. Refill the reservoir with 1 gallon of water to start. Then top up with 2 to 3 quarts through the day. On a 95-degree day, this setup can deliver supply air in the 72 to 78-degree range. That holds if outdoor humidity stays under 55%. It can make a 150-square-foot bedroom feel 8 to 14 degrees cooler by evening. Rinse the tray once a week. Wash the muslin once a month. Replace the salt charge once a season. That knowledge never disappeared. It was written out of the manual. It was waiting. There is one more move that changes everything. At sunset, crack a second window on the opposite side of the room by 2 inches. Let the box fan exhaust for 40 minutes. Then shut the opposite window and leave the wet panel in place. You purge stored heat first. You cool surfaces second. By 8 a.m., close the room, drop a curtain, and hold the gain. In an apartment, use a bathroom exhaust or hallway transom for the same pressure path, same logic, smaller scale. Your central air costs $7,800 to $14,600 to install. It costs $146 per month to run in summer. It lasts 12 to 15 years before it ends up in a landfill. This costs $86 to $142 total. It lasts 8 to 10 years, your choice, and you can scale it carefully. Start with the hottest bedroom first. Measure the intake air with a $9 thermometer. Then measure the room at pillow height, 36 inches above the floor, at 2 p.m. and again at 9 p.m. If the drop holds 6 degrees, build the second panel. If it holds 10, add a high vent above the hall door. A 2-room test tells you more than any contractor brochure. You are not buying blind. You are watching the house tell the truth about itself. That is why this method changes people. It turns comfort back into observation. Once you feel that, every sealed room and every screaming condenser starts looking less like progress and more like amnesia. You stop asking what machine you need, you start asking what the room is already trying to do. That is the real reversal, for you. Everything I've covered across this channel is now in one place. Root cellar airflow paths, lime wash mold control methods, attic foil shading tricks, step by step, season by season, room by room, in the order the families actually use it. It's called, link is in the description. But stay here, because what Eli built is the part nobody is talking about yet. What he built after that first panel is the part almost nobody sees. He stopped treating the room like one box. He treated it like layers. Coolest air low, warmest air high, moisture handled before it pooled. He cut a return opening above a doorway. It was just 6 inches tall and 18 inches wide. Then he let the room turn itself over slowly. No rush, no noise. The fan only helped the first movement. After that, the draft wanted to continue. He also paid attention to surfaces. A bed frame pushed 4 inches off the outside wall. A woven rug instead of wall-to-wall foam. A shaded lamp instead of halogen glare. A water tray under the intake, but never a wet floor. These details sound small. They are not. A cool room is a stack of small correct decisions. Miss one, and the room leaks comfort. Get 5 right, and the air starts behaving like old masonry. That is the part modern houses forgot. They seal, then struggle. They trap heat, then pay to remove it. Old houses bled heat on purpose, but only where the air path made sense. Give hot air a high exit. Give cool air a shaded wet intake. The room starts behaving like a system, not a product display. Not because it failed, because the profitable version needed dependence. Use it with discipline, and it becomes better each week. You learn which window gives the cleanest draft. You learn which curtain stops the 4 p.m. gain. You learn that a closed closet door can hold 3 degrees of trapped heat. The Amish didn't forget because the system taught them back every summer. Real knowledge does that. It corrects you in public until you listen. If you believe real knowledge has been pushed aside to protect someone else's profit, you already know what to do. Hit subscribe. Not for me, for what comes next. Because this is not a channel. This is a quiet movement of people who have decided they're done being sold what they already own. I want to hear from you. Drop your state. Drop your peak summer electric bill. Tell me whether your grandparents used a spring house, summer kitchen, or wet cloth cooling trick. I read every single one, and your answers decide what we cover next. Next week, I'm going to show you what a 1946 Penn State document reveals about attic heat. The technique uses nothing but low-E foil, furring strips, and an air gap. And the report from 1946 proves federal researchers understood radiant load 80 years before your roofer started selling you spray foam. You are not going to want to miss that one.